are two types of Google Ads books or marketing books: the Marketing for Dummies manuals, and of course, the secret hacks to marketing. Gurus don't want you to know type of nonsense stuff. This book right here sits somewhere in the middle. And today's video, we're going to talk all about this Google Ads book. This is written by Perry Marshall, Brian Todd, and Mike Rhodes. It is the sixth edition, and it sits somewhere in the middle. It's a really good book, and whether that's a good thing depends entirely on who you are. Ultimately, I think as someone who's been in the marketing world for 20 years, I took a lot of great notes and a lot of great takeaways from this book. I do this thing every time I read a book where I write down notes. It's called marginalia, kind of write them in the crux of the book. I use post-it notes to draw different spots I want to go back to and remember, or maybe just revisit down the road. And I think that even if you're a beginner, it could feel a little overwhelming because there's a lot of information about what is potentially a new topic, but it's a good book either way. And one of the good things I'll say about it initially is that it's not really outdated, which you do get a lot of with marketing books. What this book does well, let's dive into that. First, let me give credit where credit is due, which I think is important here. I'd say this is one of the clearest and structured explanations of Google Ads. Fundamentally, you'll find this in print throughout the book from beginning to end. It essentially covers everything within Google Ads. The one thing it doesn't really go into is LSA, which is local search ads, but that's okay. One of the things I enjoyed, and I think you will, is it doesn't just talk about the ads in Google, it also emphasizes position and unique selling proposition, as well as the 80-20 rule, or better known as the Pareto principle. That's actually where the book shines, in my opinion. And I think that's important because if you're going to put together a good ad, whether that be for Meta or for Google or traditional advertising, the message really counts. It is important that you are creating a message that packages your product in a unique way so that it's not a commodity, but also that you're speaking toward your target audience. So while it doesn't go super deep, it goes deep enough for that newer person or mid level marketing manager to get a lot of value out of this book. So I appreciate the heck out of that. The 80-20 application to advertising is also strong. It forces you to think about profit drivers instead of vanity metrics, which I think if you're new or even relatively new, that can be a problem when focusing on Google Ads. If you're a beginner, especially a small business owner, trying to stop burning through money or taking what feels like a risk, there's real valuable information here. If you've never experienced Google Ads campaigns before, this book will really give you, or I would say, a good structure and a good strategy, and prevent you from making any kind of expensive rookie mistakes that I've seen so many businesses make before, including myself, by the way. That alone, I think, will justify the cost of the book, which I think if you just get a few things out of it, that will make it worth your time and your money. The other thing I'll say about the book is that regardless of industry, this will apply. I've worked with folks in nonprofit sector, manufacturing, B2B, B2C, e-commerce, restaurants, spas, etc. And at the end of the day, people have a hard time getting over this. And I know it's not a very popular opinion, but I do feel like good ads are good ads. Good marketing is good marketing. Now, yes, there are nuances if you live in Southern California versus Wisconsin, or you're a restaurant versus a med spa or a chiropractor. However, if you have a strategy, if you have a USP, if you have good ads and good copy, you're going to have good results. And so I like that it talks about different industries and different size businesses. And I don't think that it really missed anything in terms of overall business advertising on Google. And so rarity for me reading a marketing book not to be able to poke that many holes in it, but it really did encompass everything. Now, switching gears a little bit, let's talk about where I think this book falls a little bit flat. It's not just me. I do like to look at reviews of other books when I make these reviews. And I think that there are areas where it does fall short, but that doesn't make it a bad book. So the criticism here, and because if you're an experienced ads manager, I think you're going to feel the same way. Someone who's scaled accounts before, someone who's been in ads for multiple years, maybe even 6 and 7 figure ad spend, you'll probably feel this to be basic. And that's not necessarily a slight here. That is just what it is. It's not geared for marketing experts. While yes, you'll get value, it's really geared to mid-level and under, in my personal opinion. But I got a lot of great reminders, and I think you will too if you consider yourself expert level. Several reviews said that this feels like an explainer instead of an advanced optimization book. Again, no surprise and no real criticism there. But I understand that, and you won't find like deep smart bidding, algorithm analysis, complex attribution modeling. But again, that's not mid to low level Google ads, so no big deal. You're not going to get a ton of cutting edge performance max scaling tactic systems because it does also leave out Google LSA ads. It doesn't go really deep into YouTube as well. It's going to miss some stuff, obviously, and that's okay. But there are other books out there and other resources out there to get that information. I would say another thing it didn't include was like high level enterprise accounts or case studies around businesses that were spending $500,000 in ad spend a year. And again, that's okay. You're just not going to get that information very easily. But of course, those are the types of things I'm looking for. One thing that did surprise me a little bit was that there were a lot of readers that felt like this book leans more toward upselling courses and coaching. And you're going to get that in books. And I've gotten that a lot. It doesn't bother me, but whether that bothers you or not depends on your tolerance for marketing and sales inside of a marketing book. I kind of expect it, to be honest. And I think that's part of writing a book is you want to sell yourself. So I don't worry about that stuff. The next question I had, and I always have when it comes to business books, and I noticed this in reviews, is the question about it being outdated or not. It's a big question when it comes to marketing books, especially ads or AI, because these things are always changing. And we know interfaces evolve, not just on a yearly basis, but on a regular basis. Features will get depreciated, campaign types shift, rules and laws change. So, yes, there are some screenshots of platforms and references that are a bit dated, but it's not bad. It didn't bother me, and it didn't hold me back from learning or applying any of the things that I took away. It's just unavoidable in print books of any kind. And I think if you have a little bit of experience, it won't be a problem and it won't get in your way. The tactical interface elements have evolved a little, but it wasn't to the point to where I was worried about adjusting or implementing any of these things. The good thing is the strategic principles do not really change. The principle or the campaign structure really offers clarity. While the tactical elements of the interface may change, the strategic principles really do not. So the campaign structure, the offer clarity, the intent matching, the bid segmentation, the profit focus, the USP positioning, those are durable. Those are timeless. So if you're wondering, who is this book for? Well, that's a great question. Let's get specific about that. I find this book is really for small business owners, the ones who are involved in marketing but don't really want to be. These are for people who have to oversee marketing or maybe people who are mid-level, entry-level marketing and they have to know it. They should know it. And this is arguably the sweet spot. I think that even if you have been in business in marketing for 5, 10 years and you feel really confident with Google Ads, you're gonna have some great takeaways. Even if you're a local service provider, or e-commerce founder, consultant, these are things you should be reading because there are a lot of really great reminders. And as I go through this, currently I manage about 25 accounts in different industries and different sizes. I was making notes for different clients saying, hey, well, this might apply to staffing, this might apply to e-commerce, this might apply to HR. And that's the beauty of it is my ideas, my brain was just the gears were turning with ideas. And that's how I know it was worth my while. But I do think that there's an element that if you're going to hire an agency or a consultant to run ads, you should be able to have intelligent conversations. So you should be reading things like this to help up your game so you can hold them accountable. And ultimately, if you don't know this stuff, you could potentially be wasting money for your business. So it's worth your while to at least have a high level understanding of Google Ads and how they work. If you're more of a high level marketer and you've been doing this for a long time, I think there's a couple things that are really nice to know or be reminded of. To me, again, it was the 80-20 rule. And getting back to a couple things, number one was focusing on applying more of the money and more of the resources to the campaigns that are working. So if you've got enough of a sample size and you've been running ads for 2 months and you can see that, you've got 5 campaigns and of them, two are generating 80% of the results, it's probably worthwhile to shift the remainder of the budget into those campaigns to get the maximum return on investment. Now, obviously, there's more nuance to that conversation, but it is really good reminder of how to shift and allocate budget without having to necessarily spend more. So I always appreciate that because I like to spend my clients' money as if it were my own. If you're wondering who this book is not for, it's not for you if you're not going to get involved in PPC or Google Ads. I almost think that if you just want to read it to be knowledgeable, good if you have the time. But if you're not going to get involved with it and you're not going to hire an agency, then don't worry about it. I think you should be focusing your energy and effort on things that are going to apply to your business. And if you have someone in the house that can do that for you, it's very competent. Maybe you don't need to be doing that. You probably don't need to read it if you're an advanced PPC specialist. If you're running a multi-million dollar account and you've lived inside scripts and audience layering, advanced conversion modeling, any sort of like cross-channel attribution, you won't find a lot of value here because it just doesn't cover those things. So you're not going to find a lot of groundbreaking insights, but good insights that drive leverage and drive to the bottom line aren't necessarily groundbreaking. Sometimes they're the most simple ones out there, just as a reminder, I find. So if you're a local service business like home services, the fundamentals here alone can improve your lead quality and hopefully reduce any kind of ad waste or wasted spend. If you're an e-commerce business, I think you'll find some helpful structure and just some thinking to help you guide or get your business in the right direction. If you're a mid-sized company, like maybe a $10, $20 million company, you might find this useful as a leadership level to understand the tool to, again, help manage the people who are performing these tasks. Maybe even get yourself a little bit nuanced around return on ad spend. That's something that I like to talk about a lot that I haven't covered yet in this book. It is really helpful to understand the ROAS and what's potential there. And anything beyond that from like an enterprise level, you probably don't need to read this book. So we're going to skip over that part completely. So, where is the real value in this book? I wouldn't say it's in the teaching of buttons and budget, but it really does teach you more about paid traffic as an asset and as something that you should be doing regardless of what you're trying to achieve. Sometimes just running ads for awareness is worthwhile because when someone does eventually have the need for your service or your product, you'll be the first one that comes to mind. Every business needs this next thing, and that is clarity on your USP, your unique selling proposition. And your profit drivers, your highest leverage keywords, I don't think people know enough about. And going back to that specifically with the 80/20 rule, where 20% of your effort drives 80% of your revenue. It's something sometimes we have to stop back, think about, because we don't always know the answer. And I find a lot of my clients don't always know that answer. So my final verdict, it's not perfect, but it's a good marketing book. It's a fun read. It's an easy read, and it didn't take a long time. It's not revolutionary, but it doesn't need to be because I found oftentimes the most effective marketing tasks and tactics in the world are the ones that are most effective. It's not really outdated, but there are elements that, I wish it had, but that's okay. Parts of the book are great and other parts are, you feel like you could skip over because you already know it. But I promise that's something you don't want to do. The other question is it worth reading? Well, if you're serious about marketing and specifically Google Ads, which I think you should be, because that's something almost every business in the world should be doing, you should read this book if you agree with me. The thing that I don't want anyone doing with Google Ads is guessing. I want you to have some basic understanding of how these fundamentals and how the foundation of it works. But more importantly, not just understanding, if you're going to do it, you should have some kind of a plan and a strategy. If nothing else, if any of this appeals to you, get it and skim it. Read sections of it where you feel like you need some help, and I think you're going to get some value out of it. So overall, my final rating, I'm going to give this a 7.8. That may seem a little harsh, and I'm a little hard on books. But again, this is more of a manual on Google Ads. It's not a traditional book. It is a good read. It was fairly engaging. It did have a couple of short stories. I wish some of them were a little longer because I find that entertaining myself. I also like to understand the challenges, the stories, because so often in running Google Ads, we don't always see immediate success. And I mean, like, we don't often see the results that we're getting a year later. We weren't getting those in the first 2 months. Sometimes to get to peak optimization, it takes 6 months or a year because I have to convince my clients to spend more. We have to test, we have to get better creative or build better creative. We have to evolve the plan. If you're a brand new account, there's learning required, not just for Google, but for you to understand how to shift campaign, how to shift targeting in geo, and all of those things. And so, you will find that there are things in the book that, geez, there are a couple things that I've learned that are not in here. And that's okay too, because the more you do it, the better you're going to get at Google Ads. So if you love marketing like me, grab a copy of the book. I think that you will thank me for it later. And I appreciate you listening and watching to another video. We'll see you next time.